Hello guys, welcome to another video. Today we'll analyze the cheapest countries to buy a house in Europe. Not only a house as a matter of fact, but any other type of property, which can be an apartment or a rural property, for example. This is probably one of the most important videos in this channel, and if you want to travel, move or invest abroad, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's start. Are you considering moving or retiring in Europe, or maybe you just want a cheap summer house in the old continent? In this video, we will list the cheapest countries to buy property in Europe, featuring the advantages and disadvantages of every place. Owning a house in a foreign country is something that many people dream of. What if I tell you can buy a house in some of the most idyllic locations in Europe and pay just a fraction of what a similar house would cost in the US or in the UK? That's exactly what we're going to discuss in this video. We will list not only the cheapest places to buy a house in Europe, but also why these places are cheap and when you should actually consider buying a property in one of these places. We will also list some prices per square meter in different countries in the continent. So let's start with our list of the cheapest countries to buy a house in Europe. We're going to start our list with the cheapest countries to buy a house with Bulgaria. Bulgaria is one of the most affordable countries in the European Union and the one with the lowest income in the bloc. This reflects in a lower than average cost of living for European standards and also in pretty cheap property prices, may they be apartments or houses. Property prices in Bulgaria are pretty low all over the country, in the countryside, by the seaside, and even if you want to live in the capital Sofia. In fact, Sofia is one of the cheapest capitals in Europe, with prices per square meter going from $1,000 to $2,000. A bit farther away from the center, it is not uncommon to find properties below $1,000 per square meter. If you go to the inner parts of the country, prices are even lower. In the city of Veliko Tarnovo, you can get an apartment for as low as $500 per square meter. Houses in smaller towns are even cheaper. If you are planning to stay in Bulgaria for more than 3 months in each 6 months and you are not an EU citizen, Bulgaria does offer a visa for retirees. Moreover, Bulgaria is a great place to conduct business. It has some of the lowest income taxes in the European Union, and getting a residence permit for that purpose is also an option. The next country is Latvia. Latvia is the best option if you want to buy a cheap house and live in Northern Europe, as most countries in this list are actually in Southern Europe. This Baltic state is a full European Union member. It is also a member of the Schengen area and currently uses the euro common currency. Despite its location in Northern Europe, Latvia does offer some of the cheapest houses and apartments in the whole of Europe. This surprisingly applies even to the capital Riga. In fact, Riga is one of the cheapest European Union capitals to buy property, together with Sofia, Bulgaria. You can find properties in Riga just outside of the city center for as low as $1,500 per square meter. It is not uncommon to find some offers at $1,000 per square meter, and even below that if the property needs renovations. Outside of Riga, prices are even lower. There is no real lower limit to this. In the city of Daugavpils, in eastern Latvia for example, it is pretty common to find apartments with a price per square meter as low as $300 US. Latvia is one of the only full EU members part of the Schengen area that offer a residence permit for real estate investors. This option might be a good one to consider if you are not an EU citizen. To qualify for this type of residence permit, you need to make an investment of at least 250,000 euros in real estate in the country. It can be one or several properties. You can live in one of them and rent the other ones, for example. The next country is Romania. Romania is one of my favorite countries in Europe for its delicious cuisine, quaint provincial towns in Transylvania, and an overall low cost of living. In Romania, you will also find some of the cheapest real estate in Europe. The capital, Bucharest, is a quite large city and has a domestic migration from other parts of Romania, making of it relatively pricey for Eastern European standards. If you go further away from the capital into smaller cities and towns, it is where you can find the real gems in terms of cost-benefit analysis. In cities like Iași or Timișoara, you can find a number of apartments ranging in the $1,000 to $1,500 per square meter. If you go to the countryside, you can find decent houses for as low as $500 per square meter built, and plus some land on top of that, included in the price. The downside of Romania is that there are no residence permits for passive residents. If you are an EU citizen, you can just move to Romania without any restriction. Those from outside the EU would need to find another reason to be able to get a residence permit, opening a company for example. If you like Romania and you want to go even further and look for even cheaper prices, you might want to consider Moldova. Moldova is a neighboring country to the east of Romania. They share a number of cultural elements including the language. Properties in Moldova are oftentimes cheaper than in Romania, but there are much less options as the country is much smaller. The next country is Ukraine. Ukraine is one of the most underrated countries in Europe in terms of almost everything, including cost of living, nightlife, eating out, and of course buying property. Before we talk about property prices in Ukraine, it is important to point out that Ukraine offers one of the most varied types of locations in which you can potentially buy a cheap house or apartment. Ukraine offers great options if you want to live in a large city like Kharkov or Lviv. The country also has great coastal towns on the Black Sea. Finally, it has many mid-sized cities and even some picturesque small towns on the Carpathian Mountains. Definitely worth considering. Prices in Ukraine vary depending on the location greatly. The capital Kyiv, however, cannot be considered a cheap option, especially in the city center. Everywhere else, apart from Kyiv, is that you can find plenty of bargains. In cities like Lviv or Kharkov, which have a good transport infrastructure with fast trains and international airports, prices are very attractive. An apartment in the city center of one of those cities will usually cost around $1,000 per square meter. If you go further from the center, you can find a lot of offers for around $500 to $600 per square meter. It is not uncommon to find cheap houses in decent conditions in most regions of Ukraine for prices from $10,000 to $20,000 US. That doesn't apply to Kyiv and its surroundings though. The next country is Albania. Albania is another pretty underrated country in Europe, but unlike Ukraine, it is much smaller in both territorial terms and in its number of inhabitants. Albania is pretty similar to Ukraine in one aspect though, its property prices. The country of Albania is blessed by nature, but also has a turbulent past. That translates into some of the cheapest properties with some of the best views in the continent. The capital, Tirana, is by far the most expensive location in the country, and properties can range from $1,000 to $2,000 US per square meter usually. In the coast of Albania is where you will find some of the greatest cheap houses and apartments in Europe. In the city of Sarande, for example, it is quite common to find apartments with a view to the sea below $1,000 US per square meter. Getting a residence permit to live in Albania is quite easy. US citizens can stay up to 1 year in Albania visa-free. Therefore, Albania can be the perfect location for a summer house, for example. You might want to check our other video on how to move to Albania for more information. The next country is Serbia. Serbia is a country that I often talk about because it offers so many advantages for anyone considering moving abroad. Among the key advantages of Serbia, a low cost of living, a pleasant weather, and an easy residence permit process are worth mentioning. Apart from that, properties in almost all parts of Serbia are quite affordable, and that is why the country made it to the list. Real estate prices in Serbia follow a similar trend in countries like Albania, Romania, or Ukraine. The capital, Belgrade, has considerably higher prices than the rest of the country. But even driving just a few miles outside of Belgrade, you will see a very significant drop in property prices. In cities like Novi Sad, which has a great location and decent infrastructure, you have a good offer of apartments in the $1,000 to $1,500 US per square meter range. If you want to buy a house in countryside Serbia, prices are pretty good. Even in the vicinity of cities, you can easily find houses in good conditions for as low as $500 per square meter. The next country is Portugal. Portugal is a country that has gained huge popularity among expats and retirees in the past decade. This has made its real estate market prices to skyrocket. But then one could ask, why is Portugal in this list then? The truth is, while Portugal property prices did increase significantly in the past decade, most of these price movements happen in some parts of the country. While Lisbon, Porto and the Algarve are quite pricey at the moment, Portugal still offers some great bargains. Most cheap houses in Portugal are located in the countryside, where you can buy a house or even a small farm for a quite cheap price. In some districts like Bragança or Castelo Branco, along the border with Spain, you can find houses under $500 US per square meter of constructed area, oftentimes with a nice garden. However, these properties tend to be either rural or in quite small towns. Moreover, it is also relatively easy to move to Portugal, even if you don't want to work there and even if you are not an EU citizen. You can check our video on how to move to Portugal for more details about it. But to put it short, there's a retirement type of visa in Portugal, and the income requirements are the lowest in Western Europe for the countries which do offer a residence permit for retirees. The last country in the list is Turkey. Turkey is another country just like Portugal that almost didn't make it to the list, but for a different reason. Mostly because just a small part of its territory is in fact in the European continent. But there are undeniable facts making of Turkey a great option if you want to buy a house abroad for ridiculously low prices. First of all, the purchase power and the cost of living in Turkey are much lower than in most European nations. Secondly, the Turkish lira, which is the country's national currency, has been losing value versus the dollar and the euro pretty constantly during the past years. There are many interesting areas to consider in Turkey, in the European part of the country as well as in the Asian part of it. You can choose between its beautiful countryside, mountainous regions, the Black Sea coast and the Mediterranean coast. In the city of Edirne, in the European part of Turkey, right next to the border with Greece and Bulgaria, prices are quite amazing. You can find properties for around $600 to $700 per square meter in pretty central areas. In Tekirdağ, a coastal city also in the European side of Turkey, prices are even cheaper. You can find an apartment in good conditions with a view to the sea for as low as $350 per square meter. What can you buy for $350 for 10 square feet in the US? Getting a residence permit to live in your property in Turkey is also quite affordable and relatively simple. Turkey also is one of the most visa-free access countries in the world, so coming as a tourist and spending some months per year in your property shouldn't be a problem regardless of your citizenship. That's it for the list of the cheapest places to buy a house in Europe. But before buying a house in Europe, there are 3 things you should consider even before choosing a country to buy your property. The first one is understanding the legislation of the country when it comes to real estate. Understanding the local regulations is critical for the success of your property acquisition. In many countries, especially those which broke up after the fall of communism, property registries might be confusing. Make sure the house you want to buy have only one owner and that it is properly registered and up to date to the current legislation in the country. Another thing you should consider is the current visa and residence permit regulation in the country. Are you allowed to visit the country without a visa? Are you allowed to get a residence permit in the country without too much hassle? You should definitely choose a country which will allow you to enjoy your property for as long as you want with the lowest level of red tape possible. The last aspect I will point out is the ongoing costs of owning a property. This can vary greatly depending on the type of property and its location, but among them we can mention utilities, taxes, maintenance and security. That's it for today's video. If you want to move abroad, if you want to travel abroad, or if you want to invest, hit the like button, check our other videos, and most importantly, subscribe. See you next time.